It's so frustrating. You weren't worried about me when I was actually not okay. Gut-wrenching. Trying not to cry in my YouTube videos. It's not easy to go home for the holidays when you are trans or gay or anything under that kind of whole umbrella. And today, I want to talk to you about Elliot Page's transphobic family. Actually, JK, I'm sorry. The nature of YouTube is that clickbait is something that you have to do, but this is about a movie. This movie is called Close to You. Elliot Page stars in it. Close to You was directed by Dominic Savage. It was written by Dominic Savage. Elliot Page did help with the story. So this is a trans narrative with a trans leading actor, and it's about going home for the holidays, basically. I'm here to do a movie review because I like talking about trans issues and I like talking about movies. It's Pride Month. Happy Pride, everybody. Ooh, it's June. We're going to talk about this movie and I'm going to tell you my thoughts on it as a transmasculine person and how, like, is it good? If you kind of want to know what to expect from this video, I have an outline and I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to riff on it. I don't have a script for this. If you watched my video about Will and Harper, the documentary that Will Ferrell made with his friend Harper, that is going to be kind of the tone that this video takes. Get your tea, get cozy, and get ready to strap in. So Close to You is about a trans man named Sam who lives in Toronto. He has been away from home and hasn't seen any of his family for like 4 years. He hasn't been back to his hometown for at least 4 years. And his hometown is like a small town on the coast, and he's got a pretty big family. He's got several siblings, and those siblings are all starting to get married or bringing their boyfriends around. And we also have another part of this movie, not related to the family part so much, is this old relationship that he had with a childhood friend. And like the story is kind of told in an overlapping manner where the scenes of the family and the old friend are kind of cut together. Those events don't necessarily happen in that order. I don't want to like spoil the experience of watching the movie. Watch it if you are in the mood to cry. I don't know. It's so interesting. I don't know how this movie would seem to someone who is not trans. I almost want to watch it again and try to perceive it through that lens, but I don't really want to spend another $4 renting it. If it's on Netflix, you can just watch it. I just don't have Netflix anymore. So yeah, it's a great movie. I definitely recommend it. This is just me reviewing it and talking about its impact and like how I perceive it as a trans person. So yeah, I guess let's kind of talk about the two things separately. And I'll start by talking about the old fling. I wasn't really sure what this movie was really trying to say in some ways. This is the thing that I've been looking for it, like themes when I'm watching something. I want to know like what was the intention, what was being communicated, what did the filmmakers want to communicate? And I don't really know 100% what was trying to be communicated with this, aside from just like this is a raw and kind of unresolved story of what's going on in this trans man's life. So he had this friend when he was younger. Her name is Kat. This movie is so interesting. I didn't know the name of the protagonist until 20 minutes into the movie, and it's an almost 2-hour-long film. Anyway, so Kat, he sees her on the train when he's on his way to his hometown, and Kat is married. She has 2 kids. She works a little job at a cafe, and there is a lot of tension in their relationship. They used to be very close, and this is something that is revealed through the course of the story, is that they used to be very close, and they were attracted to each other. That was kind of fraught. And it is kind of an interesting thing to look at because obviously Sam didn't know that he was trans back then. And in fact, that's kind of part of the narrative that like before he was super depressed and now he feels happy because he was really dysphoric before to a degree that made him suicidal. So like having a really important friendship was important for him. It was healthy for him. They are having a discussion about it at one point where they're like, what was I to you back then? And Sam's like, you were the one person I felt like I could be myself with, and I loved you. And Kat is like, I found those feelings confusing because I loved you. And Sam says, well, you know, we didn't really have any references back then. And these are people who are clearly in their 30s or even older 30s who, because Elliot Page is like 38 and this woman has like a 12-year-old kid. So yeah, they're in their 30s. And I just thought that that was kind of interesting and cute that like, you know, their relationship at that time would have been like a burgeoning lesbian relationship, but they didn't have the references, which is to say they didn't have representation. I just thought that that was a really interesting choice of wording for the story to use. We didn't have any references back then. I don't really know how I feel about the way that the movie handled that storyline and where it ends. And I guess, yeah, full spoilers here. They basically, like, they hook up at the end. Like, he goes back to Toronto and he's like, bye, I love you, I'll always love you, and I want to support you and whatever. And then he leaves back to Toronto. And then randomly, Kat goes to Toronto and she surprises him. And then they have an intimate encounter. And then she gets back on the train to go back to Toronto. And I was sitting there like, did you just cheat on your husband? Did Elliot Page's character, Sam, did he like knowingly have sexual contact with you, knowing that you were married? Like, what does this mean for her life and her kids? Like, is she leaving her husband? And her husband was a totally good guy. I was kind of, at first the film was a little bit confusing because it was creating a sense of like mysterious tension. I was like, does she have a bad husband? Like, she's acting so awkward. But then her husband is like super nice. He's super attentive. And like, she's deaf. And I think the only problem I have with anybody in her close circles is that like all these hearing people are expecting her to just lip read. Like, her husband doesn't sign at her at all. But other than that, disability representation, 2 points of disability representation, because Sam's roommate, or the person whose house he is staying in, he's renting a room with a friend, and that person uses crutches. So a little bit of disability rep on both ends. It's pretty cool. There are some characters who use sign language with Kat. But yeah, broadly, I was like, her husband doesn't, but he's a nice guy. So I'm like, did you cheat on your husband? Anyway, so I'm kind of getting this out of the way in the beginning because I don't really have a lot of strong opinions about it. I do think it's a quite beautiful, as far as the acting goes, it's a quite beautiful chemistry that they have. This like sense of lost time or like missed connection that they have with each other. So, I mean, yeah, I'm just going to leave that there because I don't really have a lot else to add to it. Maybe I'll think of something later as we continue on in this review. But I guess I was more interested in talking about the family elements because I think those elements are very tense. I had this similar thought when I was talking about the Will and Harper thing, where I'm like, I don't even know if a cis audience could understand this film. And I go into these films with a basic understanding of what they're about, and therefore I'm bringing my own sense of tension into them. Like, Will and Harper is a documentary about reintroducing Harper to the country. She used to go on all these cross-country trips by herself, stopping at like all these dive bars and everything. And it's like, she's like, can I still do those things that I love and be safe? Is it possible for me to go to a bar in Oklahoma, in small town Oklahoma, to just kind of have a drink and like be open and talk about my transition and all this? And there were scenes in that movie that had me like biting my nails and cringing, and it was really upsetting. But it's like I brought that tension in. I knew that they were going to road trip across the country, and so I'm scared for her safety. I'm assuming that nothing happened to her because it's a documentary, and like, would they include, if somebody pushed her or something, would that end up in the documentary? I don't know. Nothing like that happened according to what is in the documentary and any of the news coverage around it. But like, that was what I was ready for. I was ready for like someone to yell in her face or like be actively rude or like be violent toward her or something. And so obviously this is fiction. So there's a little bit of separation, I suppose, that didn't exist with the documentary. But I'm sitting there wondering, like, am I bringing tension into this movie that is changing its meaning in a way that's like a non-trans person wouldn't experience this? So basic premise, trans guy goes home for the holidays. And so I think so many of us are already like, you can feel it like in the bottom of you can feel it down here, like in your chest and in your stomach. By the way, you can get one of these hoodies on my merch store. They're super comfy. Plug, lug, lug. Anyway, so I'm bringing a sense of my own tension in that with like, I have family members that I don't talk to or I haven't talked to in a long time. Are they going to be actively transphobic? Like, what's the situation? In short, the family is mostly supportive. So it's not one of those cases where he's coming home and he's actively being disrespected in a way that's like you're being misgendered on purpose, or you're being told that you're of disappointment or any of those things. But that doesn't mean that it is lacking tension and its own forms of conflict that you then have to work through. From the first scene that Sam enters his childhood home, there is an off vibe. And the off vibe that I got as a transmasculine person was this person is being infantilized. Because there's a whole lot of like, oh, it's Sam. Oh, honey, why don't you go sit over there? Oh, can I get you something to drink? Oh, let's open Sam's present first. And it just struck me as like really uncomfortable in that kind of infantilizing way where everybody's like, oh my God, you're so precious. And like, literally like, to me, in my mind, if you're at a family gathering and someone's like, oh, open this present first, that's a present that a kid got you. Like if a child got their mom a Mother's Day present, then the vibe would be like, oh, let's open his first. Let's open the toy first or whatever. Like I just felt initially quite uncomfortable. And I think that that's intentional because Sam does say something about being infantilized later, but it's like pervasive in the scenes. And so there's this initial tension. And you can already tell from the first scene with the family that there is one person in the family who is actually a problem. And that is like, so Sam is like, he's hugging everybody. It's his dad's birthday, by the way. It's not like Christmas. It's just his dad's birthday. And there's one family member that Sam gives a hug. And that person says like, oh, it's so nice to see you. And kind of trails off. It's like this person was about to say Sam and then stopped themselves. Or something, or maybe they initially, it's a brother-in-law. Maybe he was initially going to go Samantha or Sammy or something. Cause I don't know. Sometimes trans people do that where they're like, my birth name was Samantha, but now I'm going to go by Samuel and the nickname Sam still applies or whatever. I think that's a recipe for getting misgendered or dead named all the time, but do whatever you want to do. But anyway, so it's just clear in the way that scene is acted that there's already going to be, like, this person's going to be a problem. And then, I'm not going to go through every single scene of this movie, to be clear. I'm just going to talk about the highlights. Sam leaves the living room. He's getting a little overwhelmed. He goes into the kitchen where his mom is still preparing dinner. And they have a conversation, and she is very supportive. It's nice. But then that guy, the brother-in-law from the previous scene, his name is Paul. Fuck you, Paul. Anyway, Paul comes in and his mom leaves the room to go find something. And then Paul like starts in on Sam and is like, so what's the deal with you? And it's like vague, but it is so obviously targeted at Sam's transness. And like Paul keeps asking like, I don't know what the rules are. I don't know what's the rules. Which is just so irritating. He says, people are being polite and it's uncomfortable. Basically implying that everybody is just being polite by calling Sam and using he, him pronouns. It's like basically saying, Sam, you're the one making this uncomfortable. And it's so irritating. I was like so mad at this guy. And then that scene ends. The mom comes back in the room and Paul got their dad like a really expensive watch, like an inappropriately expensive watch. And Sam is kind of trying to get back at Paul a little bit for being rude. And Sam's like, yeah, well, my birthday's coming up. Why don't you get me something? And then the mom says, yeah, get her a nice big Rolex. And Sam is like, him. And offers that correction. And then the mom starts to do this whole like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Oh my God, I didn't mean to. Oh my Lord. I really genuinely, I wish that I could view this as a non-trans person because this is one of those scenes where I'm like, I don't know if you can even understand what's going on in this scene. And there's another one later in the movie with the mom again, where she's like crying and upset with herself about misgendering him. And it's like, the thing that's happening in the scene from the trans perspective is I've just been misgendered. So that is a level of disrespect or potentially even harm to me. And I'm trying to offer a correction. And then the other person is like, oh my God, I'm the worst. And then you have to like help them with their feelings. So you're dealing with your feelings of being misgendered and calculating how you're going to correct them or if you're going to correct them. And then you correct them and you try to do it gently. And then they were like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm the worst. I'm a bad mother. She doesn't say that, I don't think, but that's the vibe. And then you have to be like, no, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't want you to feel that way. And it's really uncomfortable. And I will also say that there is an ongoing thing going on where multiple members of the family ask Sam, like, if he's happy. So, like, this is the first scene where that happens, where the mom is like, you know, do you feel happy? And I don't know what it is. It feels like some kind of subtle undermining of his decisions. Like, oh, really? Like, are you really happy? Like, is this really right for you? And again, it is hitting that infantilization that is probably not entirely unique to transmasculine people, but I do think that no matter which direction you're coming from it as a trans person, I think that you are still dealing with some kind of prejudice based on your assigned sex at birth. Like, if you look at the common tropes around trans men and trans women, so trans women are portrayed as being sexually aggressive, as being large and like dominating or domineering, and lacking patience or having a sense of entitlement. So all of this baggage that goes around like the stereotypes of toxic masculinity end up being applied to transgender women because people are unable to divorce the concept of a man from a trans woman. Similarly with trans men, you end up in this situation rhetorically where people are like, oh, these are our lost lesbian sisters, you know, you're cutting off healthy body parts and like, why can't you just accept that you're a beautiful woman? And it's very infantilizing. Like, so you're dealing with basically a carryover of like the themes of misogyny, but they're being applied to you in a new and unique way as a trans masculine person, which is why we have like different terms for these different things. And I've made a video before about transandrophobia or transmisandry, I guess, which is like the specific kind of discrimination that happens against transmasculine people. Because it's not just misogyny, and it's not just a generic transphobia, like I don't like you for being trans. That is specifically antagonism against trans men for being trans men. And so that's kind of the overall vibe that I think some of this stuff is falling into, where people are like, are you sure this is the right decision? Directed at Sam. Like, are you sure you're really happy? Are you sure this is what's best for you? And it's just soul crushing to try to tell people, you know, I love you. And in the later scene with the mom, Sam, he's trying to comfort her and he says, I feel very supported by you. And so for the trans person to be like, you know, I know you're concerned for me and you're worried about me and you misgendered me by accident. Like, dude, in that scene, the mom says like, I just still see you as my little girl. And I'm trying to do this and I want you to be happy. And for him to have to then say in that conversation, like, I feel very supported by you. Gut wrenching. To have your mom say directly into your eyes, I still think of you as my little girl. And to know that she doesn't mean anything negative by it, to know that she doesn't mean I refuse to honor your pronouns, but to still have to just fucking eat that. Oh my God, it was so painful for me. And there's also all of this, like, there's a sense of like, you had all this potential, which I think the sister that Sam shared a room with throughout their childhood, the sister that he was supposed to have been closest with among all the other ones, the one that his childhood friend says, hey, say hi to Kate for me. It's like, okay, that was the close sibling that you had. She says something about like, you had all this potential and now you're renting a room in Toronto. And like, meanwhile, everybody else in your family has their own house. Like everybody else has like a long-term steady partner. And there's just like all these comparisons being drawn. And I think it kind of feeds back into that idea of like, I think cis people especially are like, are you sure there was no other way for you to be happy? Like, are you sure that there wasn't something else you could have done that would have made your life livable? and would have enabled you to like marry a man and have a family and own a house and like have a stable career. Trust me, trans people are poignantly aware of the fact that we don't have the same opportunities as other people, because being visibly trans means that there are places who just straight up will not hire us, and it's like harder to find a long-term partner. So many things. It's like, yes, we are poignantly aware that if we had just not been out as trans, there are things about our lives that would probably be better. But there are fundamental things about our lives that would be so out of order, so disjointed, that life isn't even worth living with all those other things. If you don't feel right in yourself, how are you going to raise kids? Like, if you're suicidal, how are you supposed to like show up for your partner and love them on their hard days? Like, if you have nothing left to give, because this is something like this movie did hit on what I'm going to call a trope. I don't actually know if it is. I haven't watched enough trans movies to know if it's a trope, but I guess like this cultural idea that trans people are commonly suicidal. And like, to be fair, yes, roughly 41% of trans people have self-reported being suicidal at times in their life. And that number drops down to like 4% for trans people who have supportive family members. And like, this movie basically follows that pattern where everyone is so worried about Sam, and he is really upset by this. And it really comes out in this conversation that he has with his sister, Kate. He says, "You weren't worried about me when I was at my most unwell." Because we find out later in the movie from the dad especially, and from the mom, that he was like suicidally depressed, and that they were worried that they were going to just find him dead one day before he realized that he was trans and transitioned. I cried throughout this entire movie. I'm like about to choke up just telling you about it. It is so difficult. In the case of Sam and Kate, like, they shared a bedroom, and yet she wasn't worried about him when he was in his worst moments of like not wanting to be alive and like not feeling like he could be present in his life and everything. Like, yeah, you weren't worried about me when I was actually not okay. And now that I finally feel passionate about life for the first time, oh, suddenly it's a huge concern. Suddenly everybody's in my business wondering what I'm doing. And I just really thought that was, I mean, probably one of the strongest things about this entire film. Sam is really admirable because he stands up for himself in numerous different situations. Like, he stands up for himself with Paul several times in this movie. He stands up for himself in terms of being misgendered by his mom. He stands up for himself in terms of like everybody expecting him to be cool about Paul being an asshole. I will get to that in a moment. And he stands up for himself with his sister. And when his sister's like, "Well, what are you doing with your life now?" And he's like, "I'm thriving. I'm living my life. Why are you worried about me now? You weren't worried about me before." And I guess as a little side note I'll make here, I liked the conversation, how it resolved. The tension gets interrupted by like the boyfriend of her coming upstairs. And the boyfriend is super nice. He's super chill. He's hugging Sam and being like, yeah. He accidentally like spills wine, and he's like, "No, this isn't the first impression I would want to make in front of a brother." And he's really trying, and he's very sweet, and I like him a lot. He's a really cool dude. So the tension of the scene gets broken by him being in the room. Again, I'm sorry if I'm not using names. It's because they didn't really name the characters, all of them, which is fine. It's supposed to feel kind of natural, and a lot of the times close, intimate relationships don't use names directly with the other person. So I found out Sam's name because someone was like, "Is that Sam at the door? Oh, let Sam in." Salmon. Anyway, losing it. But once the tension is broken in that scene with Sam and Kate, they have a nice conversation, and we learn a little bit more about Sam's personal life. We did see Sam in his room getting dressed, and at the beginning and end of the movie, this is how it bookends the film, is like a really intimate scene of him just kind of getting dressed, and you can see his top surgery scars, and Elliot Page is ripped as hell. But we don't really get to see much of him in Toronto, which does bother me, and it is something I'm going to talk about later in this review. But we learn that he is non-monogamous, that he is bisexual, or at least he's having sexual experiences with both men and women, and it's just like a really normalizing conversation. Like one after the other, we have like a normalization of one night stands, slutting around, non-monogamy, bisexuality, and threesomes. Because the sister asks like, do you have sex with men and women at the same time? And he's like, no, but I would want to try that. So, we get this like little peek into his life where it seems like he's enjoying himself. He's thriving. He gets to hang out with other queer people. And that's nice. I'm looking in my notes and I just want to refer back to the second conversation that Sam has with his mother, where she says, I still think of you as my little girl. She does end up saying, my brave boy, I'm so proud of you, which is really nice for her to say. But also if you're trans, you'll hear, you're so brave, and be like, wow, rolling my eyes. I've heard that before. And she says basically like, I'm so lucky to have you as my son. Like, I'm so lucky. And then he says, I'm really lucky too. And again, this is happening in a scene where he's trying to navigate being misgendered by her, but still wanting to know that he loves her and that he doesn't take it personally. And for her to just straight up say, I still see you as my little girl. And yeah, like as a trans person, that is lucky to have a family who's like, I'm trying and I'm failing sometimes, but I want you to know that you're loved, and I want you to know that you can always come home. You will always have someone here. Like, that is lucky. As shitty as that feels, to be like, to have to deal with all of this bullshit and all of this emotional tension and all of the emotional labor that goes into, again, dealing with your own feelings about being misgendered, correcting someone, and like choosing how to do that and then coddling their feelings afterward. Like, it's a huge amount of emotional labor. It's exhausting. I would be exhausted. I would be clambering to get on the train at the end of the day. Clamber? I don't know. I can't talk today. I would be trying desperately to get back on the train at the end of the day. I would be exhausted, babe, okay? But compared to people who their dad says, never speak to me again, my son is dead, or whatever. And like, I know trans people personally who've had that happen. Or their dad's like, never speak to me again. As far as I'm concerned, you are dead. And like, it's crushing. And then as a trans person having to be like, yeah, I get misgendered at my family gatherings and I have to deal with my asshole brother-in-law, but I'm really comparatively lucky. Trying not to cry in my YouTube videos. There is a really intimate conversation that Sam has with his dad that genuinely, like, I think the dad is my favorite character in the whole thing. He just cuts through the bullshit. He cuts through the nonsense, and he makes it really clear that they knew that he wasn't okay before. Like they, meaning the family, mom and dad. Dad was like, yeah, every day we were worried we were going to find you dead. Like, there was clearly something deeply wrong with you. And so for you to now be trans, like, or, to be out as trans and to be happy and healthy, and like, we thought maybe you never were going to leave home. Launch, I think, is the word that dad uses in that kind of like the birds leaving the nest kind of way. They were genuinely like, I don't know that you were ever going to flourish and bloom into yourself, or if you were just going to collapse inward and potentially die. So I really think that was important in the movie, to have that kind of contrast where Sam is so frustrated with Kate because she's so worried about him. Oh my God, you're renting a room. You are not successful in your life or whatever. And for him to be like, why weren't you worried about me when I was actually unwell? And then contrasting that against the dad, who was like, I worried about you every day. Like, it just feels like Sam really needed to hear that from someone, or like I needed for Sam to hear that from someone, that like someone did give a shit when I was at my most unwell. Someone here is less concerned about me now than they were back then. Dad's like, yeah, I mean, Dad's like almost not even super interested in the details of what's going on in Sam's day-to-day life right now. He's like, you're alive and that's all I care about. And it's really touching. Okay, so this is like the height of tension for the family stuff in this film. And then like the rest of the movie kind of goes away from the family stuff into stuff with the girlfriend, Kat. I don't know if you would call her a girlfriend or not. Oh my God, I need water so badly. Okay, so Paul, he's on my shit list. Paul, he's like a brother-in-law. I think, if I'm remembering the movie correctly, I think that there are two sisters. One of them is with the nice boyfriend who said like, oh, bad impression in front of a brother. And then the other sister has her husband or boyfriend, Paul, who is a huge asshole. And then there is another brother, I think. So they're in the dining room waiting for dinner time. Sam is sitting at the table with the cool guy and Paul. And it's like chill. They're just kind of trying to relax and chill. And Sam is ignoring the microaggressions or straight up aggressions that Paul was directing at him earlier in the kitchen scene. But then Paul starts pressing buttons, like asking if it's okay to call Sam Sammy. And Sam is like, I would prefer if you did not. And that leads Paul into talking about like, I'm just trying to figure out what all the rules are, you know? I don't remember her name. He's like, my wife or girlfriend, she gave me like a list of things that I wasn't supposed to say. And I'm just trying to make sure I'm following the rules. I just want to make sure I'm obeying the rules. And Sam's like, obey what? Actually, what's the phrase? At one point, Paul is like leaving the room and Sam's like, obey what? Go fuck yourself. And I'm just like, yes, yes, that is the energy that we want. And even the other boyfriend is like, dude, like, just chill out about this. Like, why are you? And Paul is like getting more and more animated and more upset. And Sam is like, I am literally just sitting here existing and you are taking issue with that. Like, you keep bringing this shit up when we could just be having a nice evening. And like, it just keeps going. And Paul just keeps pushing. And it's so frustrating because I think that, yeah, this is one of those things. It's like trans people are just trying to exist. And people who are transphobic they want to pretend like they have to walk on eggshells around us. Sam has been totally chill, very forgiving, very let's move past this the whole time. Maybe a little bit of like, I guess he's not entirely non-confrontational because when Paul is going like, I just want to know what the rules are, Sam's like, what do you mean by that? Like, what are you trying to say? It's not non-confrontational, but it is, I think, like a pretty healthy way to try to manage somebody who is needling you on purpose, to be like, what do you mean? What are you trying to say? What is this? What are you doing? But for the most part, I feel like Sam, you know, he's just trying to get along. He's like, I'm here for my dad's birthday. I'm trying to have a good day. Just trying to chill. Everything's fine. But then Paul will not drop it. He will not drop it. And like I said, this is kind of like the height of tension in the film. It's a kind of long scene that goes back and forth and it moves from one room in the house to another. At one point, Sam is like, yeah, you know what? Fuck this. I'm leaving. I'm going home. And then I think it was like his mom followed him and was like, no, come back, have dinner. Paul's going to apologize and we're going to have dinner together. And they kind of try to force Paul to apologize. And Sam's like, yeah, I don't know, man. I just don't think that you just like walked out the room and came back and have completely changed your mind about this. So to be fair, Sam is kind of continuing the confrontation at this point. But, you know, they start to settle down and they have dinner, or they're about to sit down and have dinner. They're holding hands to say grace. It's not really a prayer, but, you know, mom wants to say something before dinner. And mom says, like, family is the most important thing. And I think this kind of breaks Sam after having dealt with all this tension for the last several hours. He's finally like, no, you know what? I am leaving. I'm leaving because family isn't the most important thing. And it's insulting that you expect me to sit here at this table with that fucking guy after the way that he's treated me today. Like, why don't you make Paul leave? And they don't. And like, I genuinely think that was where they fumbled the ball. Was Sam was about to leave. And in the mixture of all this confusing, like overlapping conversation, he's like, yeah, well, why didn't Sam leave? Or sorry, why doesn't Paul leave? Or like, why don't I get an apology from Paul? And yeah, there is just this expectation that like, you know, everything's fine. Just let everything smooth over. And I have so much respect for this character that he's like, no, actually, you know what? I am not going to sit here at this table where I am being actively disrespected by this guy, but also everyone else at the table is like, they expect me to be the bigger person. And as Sam is getting his shit on, he's getting his hat on, he's getting ready to leave, his dad tries to follow him to the front door and be like, hey, can you please stay? And he's saying all these things like, you know, there are people like that all over the world. And Sam's like, yeah, well, why do I have to deal with it here at my home? Like in my family home? Why are you expecting me to deal with it? And the dad's like, well, you just got to rise above it. And Sam's like, no, fuck that. Massive respect. Massive, absolutely monumental respect for that. Just being like, no, yes, I understand that there are transphobic people in the world, but when I come home to my family home, that should be a safe haven from that. It should be a non-negotiable, unacceptable way to treat me. You can't have both of us at the table together. You cannot have somebody who is antagonistic to me like this at the table at the same time as me if you expect me to be chill, because I will start to push back. I will make it clear that I am being disrespected and I'm not going to stand for that. Like, I'm not just going to sit here and take it. So I have a massive respect for that character and the way that that scene was portrayed. The brother, or the person who I assume is like the blood related brother, because there's like 3 men besides the dad and they're not super clear about the relationships, but I think it was like a blood brother, and the blood brother comes chasing after Elliot or after Sam and is like, I'm not trying to get you to come back in. I just want you to know that I'm so inspired, or I can't remember what he says, but he's basically like, I want to be like you. You're doing the right thing by standing up for yourself and leaving. And he's like, I love you. I'll see you in the city. I think the brother might be gay. Kind of hard to tell. But they're both like, yeah, I'll see you back in Toronto. The dad walks back in to the dining room where everybody is sitting. And he's like, you know what, everybody? I thought I was getting my son back today. After 4 years, I was looking forward to him being here. And now he's gone again. And I really think if there is any message in this movie that you could take away as a non-trans person, I guess, is that you really do need to like protect trans people if you want them in your space. And so I think that was just like something that hit pretty hard, where he was like, every day I was worried about losing my kid when they were growing up, when they were a teenager, when they were struggling. And now I see that they're thriving and I'm happy for him and I want him to be in my life, and you all and me, because I think he's realizing in that moment, he's like, I messed up. If my kid was looking to me to right things by like telling Paul to shut the hell up, I have failed, because I tried to say, oh, just rise above it, just ignore him. And that was me fumbling. And now I've lost my kid again. And so, yeah, that is kind of how that resolved. It is like the closest thing to a theme that I can think of is, if you don't support trans people, they will just find community elsewhere. Like, they will just find someone who does see them. They will find someone who does love them as they are. And then after that point, it becomes clear that some of the scenes that were spliced in before are actually happening after this. So he leaves and then he goes to the downtown area to try to find his old fling, Kat. And so some of the scenes prior to this have been them talking with each other. And then we kind of have this, focus on her and him going to the train station, but then coming back to see her and then going back to the train station and going back to Toronto, whatever. One of my big complaints about this movie is that it does a little bit more tell than show, in the context of all of the conversations that happen surrounding trans lives and, what's going on with trans people. And I have even seen this with pictures of Elliot Page himself on the internet, where people will take a pre-transition picture at like a red carpet, for example. So, back then, long hair, presenting feminine, smiling for the camera, 10 or more years younger in these pictures. And then a more modern picture of Elliot from like Instagram, where it's more like, serious, moody kind of, almost model-y kind of pictures. And he's older now, and he's got like bags under his eyes. And some people take these two images and they contrast them against each other as like, wasn't he so much happier before? Like, what happened to you? Like, oh, people keep saying that transition is this thing that unlocks happiness for you, but in actuality, he's just unhappy. Sam is like really quite serious and morose and combative in this role. And of course, it makes sense if you are going into an environment that you don't know what to expect, or that you expect to be somewhat unfriendly to you, that you have this kind of like sense of uncertainty, or you're very guarded. So for most of this film, even in the scenes where he's talking to his old best friend, it's just very serious. And Sam doesn't seem especially happy. But again, like, the circumstances are, yeah, of course you wouldn't be happy if you were coming home and your brother-in-law was being a huge asshole the whole time. The movie tells us that Sam was suicidal before, that everyone around him was worried, or his parents at least, were worried about him. And he only felt like himself with this one friend. And now he's thriving and he's having sex with all these different people and he's enjoying creative energy and sharing space with other queer and trans people. So what we are shown in the film is a very serious, not particularly happy trans man. And the scenes in Toronto are, frankly, like, the whole movie lacks color. The whole movie is a little bit muted tones and gray skies. And I really wish that they had shown that his life in Toronto is like bright and colorful in comparison to going home, walking through the rain, that kind of thing. Because I really feel like this film falls flat in convincing me that he is better off now. Like, they tell me a lot that he's better off now. And I believe it because I'm trans and because I understand how that feels. And I know everything that goes into like how you felt before and the fact that transitioning doesn't solve all your problems, but it does let you live your life in an authentic way that makes you fall in love with life. You know, you maybe never really felt particularly good about being alive before. And it does open up so many of these things. But as someone who is just so aware of the context that this film exists in, I really do wish that they had like maybe a short montage scene where like he's just come home from small town and maybe like I just like maybe 4 or 5 very brief scenes of him like having lunch at a cafe with his queer friends and like laughing and smiling, because we don't really see a lot of it. Someone in my stream chat recently was saying that they felt that it's hard to believe Elliot's acting now because since his transition, he's so smiley. And so it's kind of hard to buy his acting. And I was like, you need to watch this movie because in this movie, he is so dour through so much of the movie. I wish that we had had a scene at the end, just a little brief, like 20 seconds of him smiling and meeting with his friends, or like we see him painting and it's bright, colorful scene, or at a dance club or something. Like, I just really think a short, just show me how much more vibrant his life is in Toronto compared to his hometown. I really do feel like that was a big missed opportunity, dropping the ball. And then, you know, even the scene where he's like physically intimate with this childhood friend, it's a lot of natural light, which means it's a slightly blue light to the scene. Obviously, I don't imagine that this film had a huge budget, so I'm not trying to like come at it in that way. But what I'm trying to say is like, there's a lot of like blue tone, natural light, cloudy day lighting in this film. And a lot of like, oh, it's kind of dark inside the house that he lives in Toronto. And the only light that you're even getting is light filtering in from the windows. And I really think that it would have been a stronger message that like his life is better now if we had that. And then there's a lack of resolution, which I do not necessarily criticize, but like the woman that he was friends with, Kat, she comes to Toronto, they meet up, they have an intimacy, and then she leaves and they're both crying as she goes back to Toronto. And again, I'm unclear. Like, are you divorcing your husband? Is this just a fling? Is your husband okay with it? Like, they talk about him wanting to meet the kids. Like, she asks, like, would you even want to meet my kids? And he's like, yes, of course I want to meet them. I want to know everything about you. And it's like, it feels like there's so much potential. And then it's just like an open question as to what's going to happen in the future. And that combined with the fact that we don't see him being particularly vibrant in any of these scenes. They're all very deeply emotional scenes, but they do not sell me on the idea that he is so much passion now, so much more interested in life and so happy, and a thriving community of other queer people in Toronto. So yeah, honestly, I think that that's as much as I can reasonably say about this movie. That's close to you. It's unrated still because it's like an indie movie. Dominic Savage was the director. I think it was a great film. It was emotionally evocative. It made me feel so many things. I cried a lot. It's part of why I don't want to watch it again for the purpose of making this video is like, I don't really want to cry again over trans issues. And I'm trying to talk about trans issues in a way that feels less draining, which is why I don't even know about the most recent anti-trans laws. But, let's talk about movies. So I will talk about trans movies. If you have any recommendations, I have a list that I have been accruing. If there are any queer-themed movies that you would like me to review and talk about throughout the month of June and potentially moving forward, I want to try to do about one per week here in Pride. And I really would like you to tell me what movies you would like to see me review. If you have any non-trans specific movie recommendations or non-queer specific movie recommendations, you can leave me those as well. And I'm going to be posting that kind of thing on my tertiary channel called Musing Moss. So that channel is going to be for other stuff that is still going to be kind of talking about media in this way, but isn't trans or queer oriented. I just have a separate space for like me ranting about the Hunger Games and things like that. So yeah, man, I haven't done a video recording like this in a little while. So if you liked this video, click the like button, subscribe, feel free to donate on Patreon, as this is kind of the new direction that I'm hoping to take the channel at this point. Unscripted, but outlined rants about movies. Don't forget to pop the merch. See if there's anything you like over on the merch website, which is also linked down below. And yeah, I hope that you all enjoyed this video and that you have a good day from this point on. Toodles. It's gonna be time to thank my Patreon supporters. Thank you so much to Ing Marie, Ali T, LV Nobody, Bo E, Tiago Nascimento, Mershroll Vog, In a Box, Sarah A, Wellington Marcus, Michelle Frateroli, Michelle Winter, Danielle McDonald, DZXN, Suzanne Maynard, Jamie Jam, Nova, Sojo, Desi Quiche, Kevin Young, Celeste, Liam Hodgson, Mr. Atheist, Athiette, and Amanda B.